Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Iran threatens Israel with retaliation after saying one of the Israeli strikes injured the president of Iran. And an Iranian political advisor posted an image of nuclear mushroom clouds over Israel. Those tensions rising as Israel keeps up the military pressure on Hamas to reach a ceasefire agreement. Here in the U.S., 2 women are dead after a shooting at a church in Kentucky. We're going to bring you a look at how that tragedy unfolded. And the Internal Revenue Service says pastors can endorse political candidates from the pulpit without fear of losing their tax-exempt status. We're going to hear the implications, what they could be for American churches. And spiritual guidance on the front lines. We're going to show you how military chaplains serve in some of the world's most difficult places, providing spiritual care to men and women in the armed forces. All those stories and more right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Monday, July 14th, going to begin this half hour in the Middle East, where Iran has closed its airspace and threatened retaliation against Israel after confirming its president was wounded in an Israeli airstrike. All of this as Israel keeps up its military pressure on Hamas in Gaza. Chuck Holton brings us the story, reporting now from Jerusalem.
Day 647 of the war in Israel, and the fighting in Gaza has reached new intensity. Israeli forces are ramping up the pressure on the battlefield in a bid to force Hamas back to the negotiating table.
Gaza, we are talking, and hopefully we're going to get that straightened out over the next week. Let's see what happens.
Despite growing international pressure for a ceasefire, Hamas has rejected the latest deal, demanding a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Netanyahu says that would only embolden future attacks.
We accepted the deal the mediators offered us. Hamas refused it. They want us to leave so they can rearm and attack us again and again. I will not accept this. I will do everything to bring our hostages back.
Meanwhile, in Syria, Israeli troops uncovered over 3 tons of rockets, landmines, and explosives in abandoned regime facilities. That discovery came as Israeli and Syrian officials met quietly in Baku, marking a rare diplomatic step between the 2 longtime enemies. But while Syria's new leadership talks peace abroad, its forces are cracking down at home, fighting with Druze militias in the south amid reports of dozens killed. In Iran, officials now confirm their president was wounded during last month's Israeli strike on a National Security Council meeting. The regime has vowed the injury will not go unanswered. Tehran has since closed its airspace, raising fears that a retaliatory strike on Israel could be imminent. In a provocative post on Instagram, an advisor to the leader of Iran's parliament posted an image of nuclear mushroom clouds over Israel. At the same time, Europe is preparing to trigger snapback sanctions under the 2015 nuclear deal, cutting off Iran's oil exports and punishing companies that do business with the regime. The move could accelerate Iran's economic collapse. From Jerusalem, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is joining us now with more. So, Chris, it looks like the tensions between Iran and Israel could be heating up again. Iran saying the injury to its president by Israel will not go unanswered. So how might Iran respond?
Well, what they could do, Ephraim, and they have done before in the past several times, and certainly during the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, is fire ballistic missiles once again. I'm not sure they want to get into a full-scale war again with Israel. They suffered tremendously during those 12 days. So that ballistic missiles is one way. The UAVs and the drones, which were very unsuccessful during that 12-day war, is another option in their arsenal. The other thing is trying to maybe convince some Israelis, and they've been doing this for the last couple of years, to defect to Iran and perhaps some sort of a terror attack inside Iran or other places around the world. But they do have limited options militarily against Israel because of what happened during that 12-day war and how much suffering they took to their nuclear facilities and to their military leadership.
We noted that an Iranian advisor posted an image of a nuclear mushroom cloud over Israel. How seriously does the Israeli government take this?
Ephraim, they take that very seriously, and they noted right after that 12-day war that many Iranian officials said that they would continue to enrich uranium, that they had the right to enrich uranium, and it seems like even though they suffered tremendously during those 12 days, their ideology, their motivation, their commitment to make sure their attempt to try to make sure that they can defeat and destroy Israel through a nuclear weapon remains the same. We know that there is maybe 1,400 pounds of enriched uranium that hasn't been discovered yet. And if the Iranians had access to that, they could use not only for a potential nuclear weapon, but also a dirty bomb, which many people maybe haven't mentioned, but that's a possibility too. So Israelis take this very, very seriously, what the intentions of the Iranian government are.
For weeks, we've been hearing of a possible ceasefire in Gaza coming soon. It hasn't happened so far. How realistic is this possibility of a ceasefire and hostage deal at this point?
It doesn't seem like it's going to happen necessarily, Ephraim. We know that President Trump has been very hopeful. He said almost every week, maybe the end of this week, maybe in a few days, maybe next week, that something may happen. But I think what's happening is that Hamas is just so intransigent about their desire, their demand that Israel would pull out of the Gaza Strip and end the war. And that's a non-starter, as we heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu, and has been since the very beginning of the war, that while Israel wants to defeat Hamas militarily, make sure they can't govern, Hamas is just demanding that they survive, that the hostages may be released, but the war must get over and the IDF must pull back. That's a non-starter for not only the government, but for many Israelis.
So while we wait for this progress in the ceasefire talks, how intense is the fighting in Gaza going right now?
Well, it's going very, very intense, and some of the most intense fighting, perhaps, in the last year and a half, and plus and right now they're poised to go into Gaza City. And Gaza City is one of those areas where there still is a large Palestinian population and a large presence of Hamas, and that would represent maybe one other step along the way to Israel finally defeating all of Hamas and controlling all of the Gaza Strip. But it remains to be seen what's going to happen. But it seems to fall back to Hamas insisting on these two demands, that the IDF pull out and they negotiate a permanent ceasefire at the end of the war.
Chris, just under a minute left. What can you tell us about the Christian community in Israel? How strong is their support for the Jewish state?
Well, it varies, Ephraim, depending on what kind of what church you're talking about. Sometimes the traditional churches may not be as pro-Israel as others, but there is a strong evangelical community there in Israel. Many expats and many organizations and ministries that actually help the Israeli people and the government of Israel in one way or another by providing food and sustenance to Holocaust survivors, perhaps. CBN Israel is one of those ministries that really is reaching out to the people of Israel, especially at this time since October 7th. And they go back to the scripture, Isaiah chapter 40, that says, "Comfort, comfort ye my people." So many evangelicals are doing just that as we speak.
As we begin this week, what should we be looking out for?
Well, I think we should be looking out for this potential ceasefire. Personally, it may not happen this week as much as President Trump would like it to, but I think we should be looking to see what the IDF is going to do once this timetable for Prime Minister Netanyahu runs out and they go into the Gaza City. I think that's what we should be looking at.
All right. Thanks a lot. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. Always appreciate your insights. Looking forward to being with you all week. Thank you so much. Here at home, members of a small Baptist church in Lexington, Kentucky are grieving the loss of a mother and daughter. A gunman shot and killed when a gunman burst into their church Sunday. The incident began with a traffic stop and turned into the gunman and officer. The gunman shot and the officer fleeing the scene. It is not clear why he went to the church, but officials say he apparently had connections to the congregation. Dale Hurd is following this story.
Police say the tragedy began Sunday near Bluegrass Airport in Lexington, when a state trooper stopped a car after receiving an alert from his automated license plate reader. The suspect ambushed the trooper, shooting and wounding him as he walked up to the car.
There were some people en route to the airport, and they got out and assisted the trooper.
The shooter drove 9 miles before stealing a different car and then drove to Richmond Road Baptist Church.
Preliminary information indicates that the suspect may have had a connection to the individuals at the church.
2 women told the Lexington Herald-Leader newspaper they were cooking in the basement at Richmond Road Baptist when the gunman burst in and asked to see a woman who attended the church, the mother of his children. When they told the gunman she wasn't there, he reportedly responded, "Well, someone is going to have to die then," and he opened fire. Dead are mother and daughter Beverly Gum and Christina Combs. Their husbands, Randy Combs and church pastor Jerry Gum, were injured. Police shot and killed the suspect on site. The Herald-Leader reports Combs was a mother of 5, including a 6-month-old baby, and was planning to graduate from nursing school in the coming months.
The majority of the individuals that attend the church there are related biologically some way or another. If not, they've been friends for many, many years, so it's a very tight-knit group.
Police say the suspect had a history of mental health, drug, and anger issues, and that his ex had filed a protection order against him in the past. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear posted on X, "Please pray for everyone affected by these senseless acts of violence." The state attorney general said, "Today, violence invaded the Lord's house." This is the second church shooting in the U.S. in less than a month. In the other near Detroit, church security shot and killed the gunman. 1 person was injured. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, an important development for churches across America as the IRS says pastors can endorse political candidates from the pulpit and not have to worry about losing their tax-exempt status. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. The IRS has issued an important statement on churches and politics. The tax agency says pastors who endorse political candidates from the pulpit will no longer have to worry about losing their tax-exempt status. Lori Johnson brings us this look at the IRS's decision and its implications for churches in this country.
The Johnson Amendment, a 70-year-old tax provision, forbids all 501c3 nonprofit organizations from endorsing or opposing political candidates. Now, however, the IRS issued an exemption to churches and other houses of worship. The agency made the statement in a Texas court filing as part of a settlement with 2 churches and the national religious broadcasters who were suing the IRS for violating their freedom of speech.
I believe that anybody that holds to a biblical and theological position would be in favor to allow pastors to endorse political candidates. The filing states it's acceptable for a house of worship to speak to its congregation concerning electoral politics viewed through the lens of religious faith, as long as it's done through its customary channels.
I think that the key is it's internally facing. Now, it may be accessible to the general public, but you would have to go to the church's website. You would have to go to the church and actually be there for a sermon delivery. I mean, as in the post-COVID world, I think a lot of churches broadcast where it's accessible by the public, but it is still really designed at the end of the day. It's about an internal communication happening amongst the church.
And as long as the church does not intervene in a political campaign, comparing acceptable communication to a family discussion concerning candidates.
This new filing in the court implements this widespread understanding by churches that when we're talking about these issues as a family, it's basically the same thing as gathering around the kitchen table with your family and having these sorts of sane conversations.
Even the Bible records religious figures discussing politics.
One great example of that, for instance, would be either Elijah, that spoke out against his king at that time, or John the Baptist, who spoke out against Herod Antipas.
Today, there are a number of potential red flags.
I think pastors need to be very cautious before they endorse a particular individual, because that person could go ahead and surprise them in their tenure as a political leader. Secondly, it does have the potential, right, to divide a church. I also think that it potentially could have churches be vulnerable, perhaps to monetary donations that might be given in order to secure a particular endorsement.
President Trump has called for the repeal of the entire Johnson Amendment. For now, however, the IRS says that only churches are exempt. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead, they provide hope and counsel to military warriors, yet these wounded healers need support themselves. We're going to bring you a look at who's reaching them with love and compassion right after this. Military chaplains serve in some of the world's darkest places to provide spiritual care to our men and women in the armed forces. At times, chaplains themselves need prayer and encouragement to help them fulfill their mission. CBN's Gary Lane takes us to a recent gathering in Europe where they share their challenges and they found support.
Like the troops in their care, many military chaplains experience trauma in military life. Many passionately embrace the unique role of the wounded healer.
As chaplains, we give shoulders for others to put their head on and find peace. We give others assistance in terms of counseling.
Zambian Brigade General Chaplain Henry Matafeo recently joined over 100 military chaplains from Africa and around the world in Brussels, Belgium. Chaplain Matafeo, you traveled a long way from Zambia to attend this conference. Why? What were you hoping to achieve?
We are always on a journey of life, and there are a lot of things that we need to learn and borrow good practice from other people, and just also for fellowship, just to know what the Lord is doing in our lives as chaplains.
It's been a true delight to gather for prayer, for fellowship, for sharing wisdom and insight as to what's happening in their countries and how we can come together for the good of all of our people. And the situations both in our country and across Africa are some of the most challenging situations.
During his first overseas trip as Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth visited U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, in Stuttgart, Germany. As an Army combat veteran and Christian, Hegseth is expected to provide strong support to the vital role the chaplains play. AFRICOM Colonel Chaplain Karen Meeker explains.
Our chaplains, they walk fearlessly but humbly and with great compassion to provide comfort and encouragement to our service members in the most difficult of situations, when there's death, when there's casualties.
African chaplains attending the Brussels conference shared many of their experiences. Some work in areas overwhelmed by violent extremism, such as Nigeria and Somalia. Others provide care to those suffering from drought in countries like Ethiopia and Malawi. Additionally, some chaplains serve in war zones, including Sudan and Congo. The people of Congo have endured war and violence for decades, with over 100 armed militia groups fighting to control the country and its valuable mineral wealth. Colonel Meeker recounts her conversation with one Congolese chaplain.
When we were sharing prayer concerns, he had tears in his eyes as he asked that we would pray for him and the Congo that has been at war for 35 years. So those are the realities of what all our chaplains face, both in the United States and our friends and partners around the world.
AFRICOM has partnered with Zambia to establish a chaplain school of excellence, which will be available to individuals from 14 countries in southern Africa. While Zambia is predominantly Christian, Chaplain Matafeo emphasizes that his role is to promote Christian values, such as honesty, integrity, respect, gratitude, charity, and kindness, a mission that extends beyond the military.
When people embrace these core values, then we are going to have a society where possibly from a spiritual point of view, one doesn't need a policeman to have a conscience of what they are doing, but that they will be able to police themselves because they know who they are in the Lord and the responsibility that they have to God and as well as the nation.
As the U.S. government closely examines its overseas spending, Meeker believes that generous Christians partnering with churches and chaplains in Africa can create significant impact.
To take care of those, our brothers and sisters, wherever they may be across our nation and around the world.
Demonstrating the love of Christ through care, compassion, and friendship. Gary Lane, CBN News.
We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your day and week ahead. Stay with us. Time now for your Monday motivation, and today I want to leave you with this thought. No one likes to wait, but God often calls us to do just that. Know this, there is weight in the wait, and you determine just how heavy or light that weight will be as you wait. Worship, work, and walk in faith as you wait. It's much lighter than the weight of worrying as you wait. Remember, waiting on the Lord comes with renewed strength. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online, cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.